Thank you everyone for joining us. I'm hoping that you are each in a cool place as you join us for this webinar. So welcome to our second 1 second collaborative webinar. We have some great recap and updates for each of you. So we do hope that you will use the Q&A feature that you will see there to drop in your questions. We have several teammates and colleagues that will be answering them as they come in, or we will also be posing them to the panelists towards the end of this session. I would like to let everyone know that we are recording this because we would like to make sure that we are posting it on our United Way YouTube page. So we do encourage you to find us there, to also find our past recording from back in December. I would like to kick us off with Mayor Parker, a video that she submitted because she was unable to be with us today. You see here that we have some great attendees that will be speaking before you. We will talk about the coalition remarks from our CEO, Leah King. We will hear from our Fort Worth PD as well as our 1 Second staff. We will also hear from community members as well as some of our elected officials as well. So we look forward to getting started. So let's kick it over for the video, Deanna, with Mayor Parker's remarks.
Hold on 1 second. Let me bring that up.
Hello everyone, I'm Fort Worth Mayor Maddie Parker. Fort Worth is incredibly proud to be working alongside United Way and Tarrant County on the 1 Second Collaborative. Far too many Fort Worth kids are being impacted by gun violence, and we don't have time to waste to work towards solutions. Which is why I am so glad to hear how much work the 1 Second Collaborative has accomplished already to build an infrastructure for this program, bringing in the right staff and community support to make this effort successful. We know there are organizations across Fort Worth and Tarrant County that have been working independently to address violence prevention and intervention in our community. We also know there is power in numbers, and this unified collaborative approach brings those groups together to share resources and build upon best practices. Thank you for each of you and all the important work you're doing today and in the future. We cannot build a safer Fort Worth without you.
Thank you for that, Deanna, and we echo the mayor's remarks at United Way, thanking everyone for the work that you do here. And at this time, I would like to send it over to our president and CEO, Ms. Leah King.
Regina, thank you. And just a huge thanks to the panelists and those who are here to share some information and updates with all of you today. And definitely a huge thank you to those of you who are listening. We know there are dozens and dozens online right now. And as we mentioned earlier, this is being recorded. And so we want to make sure that it's available for anybody to access. Let me just take a moment and say that it is critically important that at this time that we are all coming together to do what we can do to keep our young people safe. We know that recently there have been some heartbreaking tragedies involving very young people, 12 years old, 8 years old. I mean, it's just, we cannot continue down this path. And we all know that the summertime is the time that things typically heat up. And so it's why it's an important time for us to bring you this update, to let you know next steps, to let you know how you get involved and how you can support the work. In terms of the work, what's happened already, you'll hear a deeper dive into what's already taken place and what is to come. But I just want to share with you that I've enjoyed being able to be a part of this steering committee where we are getting together people from the community, people from school systems, people from nonprofit organizations, and so many other organizations that have come together to really address together at this work. It is critically important that we are working in unison and that we are unified and that we are measuring things the same, that we are coordinated in our efforts, and that we are communicating more effectively. So with that, I just again want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Thank you in advance for partnering with us and helping to be part of the solution so that we end up with a place that is safe for all residents here in Fort Worth. Back over to, actually, I'm going to turn this over to my good friend, Chief Noakes. So Neil, over to you.
Thank you, Lou. We appreciate very much you including us, not just in this meeting, but in this effort. We've always said we'll never arrest our way out of the ills of society. We'll never arrest our way out of violent crime even. Now, we have a lot of great officers out there every single day who are doing amazing things, but really prevention and intervention are preferable over enforcement anytime we can possibly do it. We've been working with a lot of community members for many years on this. One of them on here, Mr. Roger Fogel, I've had conversations with many other community members, with leaders like Mayor Parker, who you saw speak earlier, Commissioner Brooks, who's on here. We met probably a year and a half ago trying to find ways to deal with the violent crime, specifically when we're talking about our youth, the people who have so much to look forward to, but sometimes don't seem to realize that. The problem was we have so many different efforts going on in so many different areas. There's not a collaborative approach. And we've been looking at some different organizations that might be able to assist. When someone actually told me about this initiative with United Way, and that was kind of a no-brainer for us. We've worked with United Way on several things, knowing Leah King as well as I do. I know her heart for service, her heart for the community. I knew we'd get the right team in place. And after meeting with Regina and Sam and some others, we feel we have the right team in place. And what I want everyone listening to know is the Fort Worth Police Department is on board with the 1 Second Collaborative. I am on board with the 1 Second Collaborative. We will do everything we can to invest in our communities and invest in our young people and deal with the issues that are contributing to criminality. Just because someone commits a crime does not mean they're a bad person. It could be a good person, but they're making bad decisions. We have a lot of young people out there who I think don't have hope. They don't have direction. They don't know what other way to turn in life. And we've got to give them an alternative. It's one thing to tell a person to just stop committing crimes, stop doing what they're doing. But if we don't offer alternatives, if we don't invest in them, if we don't show we have something that can make their lives better, that can give them a different path to go down, chances are they're going to stay where they've been going. And that's, as we have said, that's a path we can't go down. We in Fort Worth Police Department take a lot of pride in the work we do, but we know very well that doing it alone is not going to work. We have to be able to work with the community. We have to be able to work with these organizations who do invest in the community and in our young people already, but bring all those resources together with our city leaders, our county leaders, and we can change Tarrant County. We can change Fort Worth. It's going to be a prolonged effort. Things don't change overnight. We hope for quick wins, absolutely. But we're in this for the long haul. We want to be a good team member. We look forward to working with you for a long time. We look forward to seeing a lot of great things happen with a lot of people in Fort Worth. And just quickly, if I may, I'm gonna have to jump off the call in a little bit. My apologies. We had an officer, unfortunately, who passed away off duty due to a medical emergency. And there's a viewing and visitation a little bit later I have to attend. But otherwise, I would be here for the whole meeting. We're gonna be engaged. I have Executive Chief Robert Aldridge, Executive Assistant Chief, who's basically the #2 in command. He's doing some great things. Bright guy, brilliant. He's invested in this as well. He's got some information he would like to provide too. And Regina Lee, would you like me to just turn it over to Assistant Chief Aldridge now? Okay.
If you would.
Thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. It's an honor for us to be here with you.
And Chief Noakes, if you would, please also extend our condolences to the family as well.
Thank you. I will.
All right, I want to echo the sentiments of the chief. I'm honored to be a part of this project. I'm on the steering committee. I'm very honored to be on the steering committee. I know that we have to deal with issues a different way. It's very important for us to break the cycle of violence that's going on in our city. Some of the information I'm going to share with you today, I mean, it's going to show some of our crime numbers, But I want you to know, I mean, although we're seeing positive results from some of the things that we're doing, we're not doing it alone. It takes the community, it takes our private partnerships that we have out there. I mean, I consider Roger a really good friend from the time that we spent doing other things within the department. So let me just kind of jump into it because I know everybody's time is valuable. I want to kind of highlight where we ended up last year, so everybody's kind of aware. So last year, we reduced our non-fatal shootings by 23%, our homicides by 24%, and our total reduction of violent crime was 13.4%. Those numbers are pretty astounding for the work that not only officers are doing out there, but some of the private entities that are out there helping us, you know, engaging the youth in other type of activities to keep them off the streets, to keep them really occupied in some of the crime that they're doing. So whenever we fast forward to this year's crime numbers, these are kind of the numbers year to date. Just please be advised, these are unofficial numbers and the numbers won't change dramatically, but you know, one or two numbers may change after we get the official numbers in. But you can see in homicides, we're down significantly. You'll see off on the left-hand side, you'll see the FV, that's family violence. We break those out because we think it's really important to track those separately. Because there are different tracking mechanisms and different resources that we can use to try and address those problems as well. But as you can see from the overall number, you know, we're tracking 6% less than where we were last year. And that's really good. I mean, in some of the areas that we think are the most important, homicides, non-fatal shootings, you know, and aggravated assaults, those are the ones that impact the community the most. We can go on to the next slide. So there is a lot of numbers on this page, but really what it is a comparison from last year, from January to May to this year, January to May, same time frame with the zip codes outlined. You got 76102 up to 76107, then 76112, 116, 119, and 133. You can look at these aggregate numbers kind of going down the list. But you can tell, you know, we've had significant decreases in the majority of those zip codes, and that kind of correlates with our reduction in violent crime. Again, our efforts are very targeted. We consider them extremely surgical. Historically, whenever we address violent crime or address any crime, we used to saturate an area. And we knew that a lot of the community members were impacted, negatively impacted by the police presence within that area, instead of us just surgically taking out the violent offenders and being able to protect the community. Moving forward, we leverage technology, we use flock cameras, surveillance cameras, and we are literally able to go and take the bad actors out of the community without impacting the good people that are just coming around, just trying to make it and live, work, and play around our community. So for me, I'm very blessed to be here. Numbers don't tell the whole story. There are so many people out there doing good work, not only the officers on the street, but also some of our private partnerships and really just the citizens that are out there trying to make sure that our young people stay safe and they're doing the right thing. So I look forward to the conversation, and I'm going to turn this back over to Regina.
Thank you both, and we definitely appreciate the partnership as well. All of our work is rooted in data. And this particular data is only just a piece of what we use to direct the work that we're doing with our partners. And so we're really excited to have this along with the other data that helps us make many of our decisions. I'm also equally excited that we have with us for this meeting our new program director. When we first did our webinar in December, our program director, we were on the hunt at that particular time. And so we're really excited to bring you Sam Varner. And so I'm going to kick it over to him for his introduction and a little bit about what we're doing now as well. Sam.
Thank you, Regina. It's a pleasure to be here. Just a little bit about myself. I grew up in this apartment complex that you see in the picture, Park Terrace Apartments. While I was here, my peers and I were exposed to a lot of risk factors. Those risk factors affected us deeply, and to this day, a lot of my friends are dead or in jail or prison or getting out of prison. As a young person, I moved around a lot. But it was when I got to Stop 6 that I was able to receive the intervention I needed. My mother was very proactive in surrounding me with people that would help me out. And that's why the 1 Second Collaborative is important for us to provide those protective factors to young people. So now I would like to introduce you to my team, Mr. Roger Fogle and Ms. Christine Keene. So Roger, introduce yourself and let us know what you're working on.
Greetings, everyone. First, let me send a big thank you and a huge thank you and a hug to everybody that's on this call. We appreciate you guys being here. Thank you for taking time out of your day. I am Roger Fogle. I am the program coordinator on the 1 Second Collaborative. I'm gonna tell you a little bit about my why for doing this work. My why is simple. It's the pain. It's the pain that that I feel when I go to a crime scene and I see a child lying in their own blood because of gun violence. It's the pain that I see when I'm sitting on a pew at a church and there's a funeral and their mother has the look of emptiness in her eyes. It's painful to hear siblings ask the question why and be ignored. Those same siblings need to be heard. Their voice matters. And the Youth Advisory Board is a great way to answer their why. The Youth Advisory Board serves as a liaison between the steering committee and the youth of the community, which bridges a generational gap. The Youth Advisory Board provides our population the opportunity to share their perspective, feelings, solutions, and their own why. And what I'm gonna do with the Youth Advisory Board, we're going to allow them to do 1-year commitments. They can do up to 3 to 4 commitments in that time. The board will consist of 11 members, with one from each of the targeted zip codes that we're working with. The board will coordinate with and participate in activities such they'll create a gun violence awareness commercial, infomercial, video, whatever you choose to call it. They'll be speaking at workshops and events. They'll be participating in discussion panels and conversations about gun violence. Board members will operate under the banner, nothing about us without us. And we'll meet monthly at the United Way of Tarrant County. The board focuses on developing advocacy and leadership skills to improve services and increase understanding of what it means to be a youth dealing with gun violence. I will operate as the board's advisor, but I need your help, support, and input. With each of you being stakeholders, who would you suggest? Please send me your suggestions to Roger Fogle at unitedway.org. It's ROGER.FOGGLE@UNITEDWAY Tarrant.org, or call me 817-258-8011. Thank you today, tomorrow, and forever. And I'm going to pass it over to Christine Keene, my esteemed colleague.
Thank you, Roger, for that introduction. Hello, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for taking your time for being here today, showing that you care as much about this initiative and collaborative as we do. Again, my name is Christine Keene. I am a coordinator for the 1 Second Collaborative. A little about myself: I started my career in juvenile probation. I was a juvenile probation officer here in Tarrant County, as well as Harris County down in Houston. I have spent the last 20 years with Fort Worth ISD. I spent the first 7 as a disciplinary hearing officer, and I've had the privilege of spending the last 13 at the Paul Laurence Dunbar High School in East Fort Worth as a stay-in-school coordinator. During my tenure there, I noticed an increase in gang and gun violence in our young people. I would turn on the news and I would know the names and know the streets and know the families that were affected. And I noticed an increase. And in my 12th and 13th year, I said, hey, there's something else I can do. There's something more that I can do to help with this initiative. And that's when I joined the 1 Second Collaborative back in March of this year. While we were at Dunbar, we found it very beneficial to have several different disciplines sitting around a table when we were dealing with a young person. It might be the principal, it might be a teacher, it might be intervention specialist. It might be a counselor or special education services, and all these disciplines would come together and do a wraparound of services that would best help that young person. And the goal of the multidisciplinary team that we're working on right now is it has a similar scope, that we want to meet the young people where they are, and we want to implement immediate services that they will be able to use with a follow-up all the way until they are officially successful or no longer need our services, I should say. And some of the interventions that we're looking at in the multidisciplinary team is we want to start with a comprehensive intervention plan. And then there's basic needs we want to look at: housing, nutrition, mentoring, career coaching. And then we also want to address mental health, behavioral health, drug and alcohol abuse. We want to help them with their educational assistance, their government assistance navigation, put them in touch with an outreach worker if needed. So whatever services is needed to help that young people, we want to make sure that we give that to them immediately. We don't want them to have to wait. We want to say, this is what they need, and they need it now. And we need to be the ones to make sure that they receive it, and then they continue to receive it, and that none of them fall through the cracks. And that's something I feel very passionately about, is making sure that none of our young people fall through the cracks. So this is really just one deliverable of the multidisciplinary team, but we are looking forward to roll it out soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Christine. So now I would like to discuss our steering committee and ways the community can be engaged with the 1 Second Collaborative. So we also have public hearings, as we are having today. There will be steering committee work groups, and these work groups will give us an opportunity to focus the resources where they're needed. And you'll hear a little bit more about that later. We will also conduct community assessment and perception surveys. These surveys will give us an opportunity to receive feedback from community members to let the steering committee know exactly what they need, what gaps need to be filled. Next slide, please. So this is our steering committee. Steering committee is comprised of 28 members. We have our anchor organizations, which are the Fort Worth Police Department, Tarrant County, the City of Fort Worth, of course, United Way, as well as representation from the school districts. Also, an important aspect of our steering committee is that we have representation from each of the zip codes that we're targeting with this initiative. And this community representation is important. We also have representation from community-based organizations that are already doing the work. So this steering committee will eventually begin to implement tasks and begin to address the issues at hand. Next slide, please. So the steering committee launched in April. We are on the cusp of our third meeting. The first 2 meetings were designed to empathize and define the problems. We used the human experiences model to figure out what's our why certain people came to the table, what makes this work important to us. We also wanted to define the problem, define what the underlying causes of violence are and how we can address those issues. Our next phase is the ideation phase. And in this phase, this is when we ask ourselves the question, how might we cut some of the red tape? How might we share information? How might we increase protective factors for young people in Tarrant County? And next we'll begin building the prototypes, and that goes back into the work groups as well as the multidisciplinary team. Most importantly, at this phase, we are beginning to develop the metrics. How will we evaluate the programs? How do we know what works? And once we develop those metrics, we'll get into the implementation phase, and that is coming up in the fall. Next slide, please. So back to the human-centered model. During our first 3 steering committee meetings, we discussed the issues and the barriers that youth and adolescents face. We also wanted to look at the societal causes of urban violence and as well as the system related causes. One thing that consistently came up was that role models were needed. There's a lack of coping skills as well. And also self-empowerment is needed. From a societal standpoint, we discuss how instant gratification is affecting the way the youth are able to cope. And again, there's that mentoring piece. As it relates to the system as a whole, we know that there's a lack of resources for students. The steering committee is dedicated to addressing these issues. Next slide, please. So every time the steering committee convenes, we want to make it a point to see if we're getting it right, how everyone is feeling about the process, what the next step should be. So we ask questions. Is the committee effectively communicating to the relevant stakeholders? How do they feel about the decision-making process? So we just want you all to know that it's not a group of people meeting and not taking the needs of the community seriously. So these survey responses will be made available in the future and anytime you need them. Next slide, please. Now, grant deliverables. How do we know that the work is being done? In regards to program recruitment, myself and my staff are in place. I started May the 1st. We also wanted to make sure that we have our intervention team in place and the outreach workers. And anyone that knows this work knows that the intervention team, those that actually go out into the community and intervene in violence, that is the linchpin of violence interruption. But we also need to address the underlying causes of violence. Next slide, please. And addressing those underlying causes of violence is going to take a four-pronged approach: prevention, intervention, suppression, and reentry. So right now, we have already administered the request for applications. Organizations have been approved for funding. In regards to intervention, we have selected the organizations that we plan to partner with to go out into the community and interrupt violence directly. In regards to suppression, we've completed the RFA process as well, and reentry, we've completed the process as well. Now, there are some things that are still in progress. Earlier, I discussed the metrics. How are we going to evaluate these programs? That's what we're in the process of doing now. When the steering committee meets tomorrow, as well as, again, a month later, we'll develop the metrics and begin to prepare for our implementation phase that will take place in the fall. Okay, next slide, please.
That was the last slide.
So that is a bit about our steering committee. And again, the steering committee is the governing body. It's comprised of individuals that are stakeholders, individuals that really deeply care about interrupting violence and reducing teenage gun violence in our community. So at this time, to give you an idea on how the work groups are going to operate and what work groups are, I would like to introduce you to our consultant with Cities United, Mr. Anthony Smith.
Anthony, before you get started, can I do just a quick church announcement as well? So for everyone that is joining us, not only will we have, excuse me, a recording, we will also be sharing these slides with you as well. I know for some of the writing is a little small, as well as with the steering committee. For some who, if you did not see our earlier webinar, it would be good for you to see who sits on our steering committee and the representatives. So I know those slides went a little bit fast. So you will get these slides as well. We will also be sharing our emails at the end where you could send us direct communication where you won't have to wait for us to upload it. We can send that to you directly at the end of this session. So now back over to you, Anthony.
Thank you, Regina, and thank you for that, Sam. And it never hurts to have a church announcement to make sure we're all on the same page. Good to see you all again. Anthony Smith, Executive Director with Cities United, and been helping support the build out of the 1 Second Collaborative, which is, as you have heard from the chief and from Leah and Sam and Regina and others, Roger and Christina, that they, it really is about how do we all come together and really make sure that we're working in partnership to make sure that we create a system where we can identify, engage, and support those who are most at risk. Really do appreciate the chief and the deputy chief for really talking about how we make sure that this is not just about law enforcement, but it's about all of us. We want to hold people accountable when they do harm in community, but we also want to make sure that we can do the prevention and intervention work that's important to keep people out of jail and out of harm's way. So what do we do there and how do we do that? So this partnership is important. And you heard Sam talk about the steering committee, and then you heard Roger talk about the youth advisory board, and Christina talked about the multidisciplinary team. I always try to make sure I get that right. There's so many moving pieces to this to make sure that we all get it right. But then there's also space for other voices to come, which is what the work groups are all about. The work groups allow us to bring in other community members, other community voices, to really spend a significant amount of time, and it's time limited, right? So we don't want folks to think when we say work groups, that you're gonna be sitting on this work group for a year. This is really a 6 to 8 week kind of agreement that says, hey, we're gonna come together, we're gonna work real hard for 8 weeks, we're gonna have this opportunity to propose back to the steering committee. These are the recommendations that we have and that we want to push forward inside of our comprehensive public safety plan, right? So the work groups are going to be really, really helpful in helping us identify our goals, our desired outcomes, and really coming together as groups, experts in their field. Some of the folks will be talking about education. So you can think about work groups a number of ways. You can have one that's focused on education, one's focused on workforce. You can have some focused strictly on the community violence intervention ecosystem, because a lot of folks still need some understanding of what that is. We need to understand what the capacity that we need for that is and how do we add more to it. So really just thinking through the work groups as a way to really make sure that we stay in touch with community, that we bring more community voices into the mix. And I think when we were speaking to somebody last time I was here, making sure that we have all voices of all walks of life in Tarrant County and in Fort Worth at the table. So having a group that focuses in on cultural relevancy and making sure that we don't leave anybody out of the conversation. And what would that group look like? So you want to make sure you have co-chairs for those groups. You want to make sure that these work groups are open to community members, that they're public, and that folks can come in and chime in and be a part of that conversation. But they've got to be really, really specific on the time that they spend together, what we're asking them to do, and then what their charge is. So the charge has got to be really, really clear as we build these out. But as we've done these across the country and other cities, it really is the linchpin in helping us identify what our SMART goals are going to look like, who's responsible for those goals when we write this plan, and then how do we hold each other accountable inside of that ecosystem. So as you hear about all of these different ways to get involved, don't just think it's the steering committee, don't just think it's the youth advisory board, don't just think it's the multidisciplinary team. There's going to be work groups who come together almost yearly to really help us redefine and keep our plan. Because once we have this plan written, we got to remember that it's a living document and that we want to update it and evaluate it and make sure that we don't just leave it, it's just not stagnant, but it really is addressing the needs of the people who we're trying to do. And the last thing I'll say on this issue is, again, making sure that everybody who sits at any of those tables remember what this work is for, and it is creating a system to identify, engage, and support those who are most at risk. There's a whole lot of good work that needs to happen in Tarrant County and Fort Worth, but 1 second really is around reducing the homicides and reducing the shootings. So we got to remember, as you heard Sam talked earlier, we need to focus on intervention right now so that we can stop the bleeding and stop those emergencies that you heard Roger talk about. So then we can also start thinking about the prevention a little bit more. We can also start thinking about other things, but there's too many kids in harm's way now. And 1 second's got to stay focused and stay committed to what the mission and purpose is of the work that we came together to do. So Thank you for letting me speak, Sam, and creating space. Excited to be partnering with you all as you move forward. And we'll get more details on the work group soon and how you can be a part of it. But I just want to give folks an idea of what it's going to look like and hopefully entice some of you all on the call to be ready to jump in once Sam and the team gives you a buzz to say, hey, we're ready for you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Anthony, for that. So again, in regards to our steering committee, as I said earlier, the steering committee is comprised of people that are from the community. They were nominated by council members and they represent those zip codes. So today we have Cliff Sparks here to share with you all some of his experiences and the way he feels about the engagement with the steering committee.
Can't hear you yet, Cliff.
You're showing muted on our end, Cliff.
All right, y'all, bear with me. I got a
Hey.
new version. Hold on one second. Hold on.
Cliff has a new baby, so for some, we know that can be, you know, when you think you're going to do something that throws you through a whole nother loop. But we do congratulate him and his family with the newborn. So we'll take a moment to get him situated as well.
Sorry about that, guys. Y'all, it's been a day, I'm telling you. So my reason of being a part of the steering committee, I was nominated by a council member. My purpose of being a part is to help make change in the community. First, I want to say my brother was murdered about 2 years ago on East Lancaster in French Quarters Apartments. He was gunned down. He got shot about they shot him about 8, 9 times. They were scared of him. He was a fighter. And so with me being a part of this committee and being on this committee, I feel like with me being a part of it, we can help make a difference. And we can stop talking about it and be about it. So the biggest thing is to get out in the community, be hands-on. People want to talk about gun violence and they want to say about the solution. Do we have a solution? Okay, what are you guys' solution? Yeah, a lot of people saying that we're not doing that. A lot of people not doing anything in the community about gun violence. Bring your solution to us and see if we can help, or see if you can help us fight the gun violence that's going on in the community. So, and my why is because I believe that I can get out in the field and help make a difference with any organization and help make a change in this community towards gun violence.
Thank you, Cliff, for those comments. So at this time, we're going to pass it to Ms. Regina Williams to discuss our allocations process and where we are at this moment.
Thank you, Sam. And before we go to allocations, I do just want to kind of echo a couple of things that have been lifted up. I'll go back to the work groups with Anthony and kind of align that with some of the remarks from Cliff. There is space for so many more people in this work. We know that there are many of you who have been boots on the ground for years doing this work, and we invite you to join us, and that's where the work groups are going to come in at. We know that there are not solutions that we are even thinking of that you have maybe been discussing for quite some time. And so we're hoping that you will reach out through the work of the work groups, come and join us with this. If we have not reached out, we encourage you to reach out to us. Make sure that we have you on our distribution list because this work is for everyone. This is community work. This is not just United Way's work. It's not just Cities United or Fort Worth PD or the city. This is the community work. And each of you are valued in what you bring to the table and the solutions and the conversations that you all are having. So we do hope that you join us with that. I would like to, Deanna, if you don't mind, to go back to the slide where we were talking about the steering committee as far as the timeline. If I could start there before we go into allocations, if you could cue that up for me. So on the timeline, I think it's also important because, part of the discussion is about, what are we doing? How are we doing it? And a lot of it has to do with the community members, and the community is who makes up the steering committee. And so we started back in December 2022. And as we've made our way into the summer, you will see where we are. We have, as Sam mentioned, have hired and onboarded our full staff of where we are now, of what our full staff is considered. That has been conducted. We have administered our RFP, our RFA, and pushed that out to community organizations that were interested in applying. And that is just our phase one, and I will talk about it as well. We have started, of course, establishing our steering committee. We are preparing to meet for our third meeting on tomorrow. And they, as Sam mentioned, has worked through what we call the human design phase of the defining and the ideation, and getting us to the point where we can really start implementing the work group. In the summer is exactly where we thought that we would be. We know that this work, even though the grant may be 2.5 years, we know that this could be a 10-year process. It is not overnight. So in the program implementation phase, you will see here where we're identifying targeted communities. We were ahead of schedule there. We did that in the spring where we prioritized some of our zip codes, but those zip codes are not the only zip codes. We know that we could easily replace a zip code with another zip code and show some of the data, but the data at that particular time really rise to the occasion of where we wanted to focus some of our interest at, but also knowing that we will be serving all of Tarrant County. Developing the goals and the objectives for success. That's what we are looking at now, not just with the steering committee, but with the organizations that we will be allocating funds to, as well as the work groups. Again, this work does not live with just one particular body. It doesn't live with just a steering committee. It won't live with just the grantees. It will also live with the work groups as well. And then throughout the year, we will be doing evaluations. We will do biannually, but we also do surveys throughout to make sure that we're headed in the right direction. We want to take the cues from those who are doing the work. So if we're heading in the right direction, great, we will continue in that vein. Where we need to tweak, then that's where we will need to tweak as well. The community is what guides that. What's happening in the community is what guides that. And so we will stay flexible. We will stay nimble, as our staff mentions, to be able to answer where we are so that we can truly be effective in the work that we do. I would now like to go and focus on the allocations for just a moment. So Deanna, if you can get me to those slides. So on the timeline, you saw that in the summer, the goal was to begin allocating dollars. So we are on schedule with it. And so next slide, please. There was a focus for us. When we started out this work, we really, we had what we called a bidders conference. We pushed out this opportunity far and wide. We talked to organizations and we asked them, who do you work with? Who do you know in the community? We asked them to pass the word. We also started with organizations who, we knew about as well, but we know that we don't know every organization that's doing the work in the community. So we really relied on others to kind of help connect us. So we had a very vast distribution list that we submitted and said, hey, this opportunity to apply for funding is available. It will not be the only opportunity. And the reason for that, we did a phase 1 and we anticipate doing also an allocation for phase 2. And that reason is because we know that we probably only scratched the surface. We know that there are other organizations out there doing great work, and we wanted to make sure that we provided an opportunity for those organizations as word spread to be able to apply for this funding as well. So we really wanted to, back to Anthony's, message about reducing homicides, through intervention. When we hosted our bidders conference, we basically was telling organizations, this is how much money we're working with in the different, what we call domains. And we're talking prevention, intervention, reentry, suppression, outreach, and multidisciplinary intervention team. And we had buckets of money for each one of those areas as we started. This is funding that is through the county and through the city. And for some of those dollars, they were very specific for those particular areas. But we wanted to look at programmatic work that is evidence-based and proven. We know that we don't have time to waste, and we really wanted to fund what works approach. And that's what we presented to organizations that applied for dollars. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, these were our focus areas under prevention, intervention, suppression, and reentry. And what was great about this opportunity as things evolved in our community, as we heard of more shootings, more deaths, more families impacted. And we do know that those are just those that we know about. We know that there are incidents that we may not know about. We know that we needed to tailor where we place dollars at into intervention. What can we impact right now? What are those organizations that are ready to go, have been doing the work, is doing the work and shows the metrics that they have an evidence-based and proven method. And so we had to tailor dollars to make sure that we were meeting the community's needs at that moment. Next slide, please. So we had a 20-person review panel, 100% volunteer driven. United Way does not make those funding decisions. With our review panelists, we had a mix of reviewers who have reviewed for United Way in the past, so we consider them to be veteran reviewers. But then we also had new reviewers as well. And many of them were from the community, know the organizations, familiar with what's going on, to have a really good mix of conversations. Once those reviewers, each reviewer was assigned 5 to 6 reviews, and we had about 4 to 5 individuals review every application. Again, that provides us an opportunity to have a wide lens, different perspective as well, and different voice with those applications as far as feedback. Once they conducted their review of those organizations and what they were proposing, they hosted a consensus meeting. During that consensus meeting is when we talk about where do we feel this fits in the 1 second funding strategy right now? What is ready to go right now? So we would look at the timeline. Is it 30 days out, 6 months out? Would they have to hire individuals in order to conduct this work? Is it capacity building, meaning they're doing the work, but if they had a few more dollars, we could further the work that we're doing and further the impact. Once they conducted that consensus and submitted recommendations, it came to staff for us to conduct an audit on that. We then sent it up to what we call a subset of our steering committee for their review as well. And then finally to the anchor organizations to give us their final feedback if they approve those recommendations. So again, several layers of approvals to make sure that the review panelists were not missing anything. And I would just like to publicly say that that was a very heavy lift, and we appreciate the work that each one of them did in that process. Next slide, please. So this is where we stand with our recommendations. And when we say recommendations, because until an organization signs their agreement, then that is when it is final. So we won't be producing at this time exact organizations that were funded. That information was going out to organizations on yesterday and the day before. So we had 29 applications that were submitted for a little bit over $9 million. 18 were recommended for phase one for a little bit over $2 million. And again, I want to emphasize phase one. There will be a phase two funding as well. We are still putting together the scope of it. We anticipate that to also be in this year. And what we want to do is look at those organizations, one, that were maybe funded low, or maybe not funded at all because maybe the what they proposed is something that was in the future, or maybe in the next school year or in the summertime, because there were some really great programs that were for the summer, but we were already in July, and so we knew that we would need to look at next summer for some of those as well. So you'll see here the dollars that makes up that $2.1 million under prevention, intervention, suppression, reentry, outreach, and the multidisciplinary intervention. Again, you'll see here that most of our dollars went to outreach and intervention because again, what we're looking at is immediate impact in order to really impact the homicides that are taking place right now through intervention. And then next was prevention dollars. And we know that there are a lot of prevention opportunities out there. And this is not going to be, again, the only funding opportunity through the city and the county. Even through United Way, we are also looking for additional dollars to put behind this. But we also recognize that no matter how many dollars you put towards a problem, that is only a piece of this particular work. But we do want to support those organizations that are out there doing the work day in and day out. And we recognize that they have been here, they've been in the trenches, they've been boots on the ground doing so, and we want to be able to support that. But we also know that that's just a scratch. So we do hope that you will continue to follow this. We do hope that if you have a nonprofit in working with young people to address gun violence, that you will also consider looking out for additional funding opportunities. And we also ask those who submitted this time to stay with it, because as we continue to show improvement, that's where we will also be able to focus more of these dollars in some of the other areas as well as those dollars become available. And did I have another slide, Deanna? Nope. All right, great. Thank you so much for that. So now I'm going to toss it back to Sam.
Thank you, Regina, for those comments. So now at this time, we are going to enter our question and answer session. So if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat and we'll make sure that the question is answered by the appropriate person on our panel.
So Sam, earlier I'll just toss out just for the general body, one or two of the questions that came in was just about being able to know who was on the steering committee. So we will, again, we'll make sure that we send that out so that they can see who the appointees were for that. And we are also scanning to see if there are any additional questions. So we'll give a moment.
I would recommend just adding the steering committee to the 1 Second website, and you may even drop a link to the website so that the people who are participating can see, and they can check that website regularly for updates, and perhaps we can provide some registration space so that as new things happen, we can push that information out. We certainly have the email addresses for those who are participating today, but we'd like to continue to push information out to those who are interested as well.
Great, thank you for that, Leah. There is one question, Sam, and others are coming through, and I will take this next one. I may have missed this, but how were the earlier applications solicited? Has any funding for the first group of applications been awarded? So yes, so the solicitations of applications was done in a number of ways. One, there is a distribution list through United Way of those who have been funded before, whether it was through emergency relief or what we call Women United or Safety Net, veterans, any number of funding allocations. But we know that that's just a small segment of individuals. We also relied very heavily on the community, where we pushed it out on social media, we pushed it out on our website, we pushed it out with those who we know conduct this work as well, to also ask them who else is in this space that may not be on our list. So again, we looked for community members to help us with that. We looked for even funding that the city does through CCPD to also push it out that way. So again, I think that was also the rationale for us to do a phase 1 funding and a phase 2, because we know that that does not circle everyone. So we do hope that if you are on this webinar or you know of anyone that was not aware of this funding opportunity, to please send us an email at 1.2nd@unitedwaytarrant.org, and we can make sure that we add you to the distribution list. Would you consider adding more priority zip codes? Absolutely. This is just a starting point. Just based on the data. Again, the data is what guided this work and will continue to guide this work. But this is also the reason why for every webinar, every community meeting that we have, we will start with the data. So therefore, we can also adjust as necessary. And Tarrant County Collaborative for Peace and Justice, Roy Bowen, board member, we would like to have a role. Roy, we would love for you to contact us so that we can make sure that we have your contact information. Sam or Christine, anything else that you all see? Or any other panelists on questions?
I don't see any additional at this time, Regina.
I do want to lift up even some of the questions that may have been answered already in the chat as well. What do we need to do to include Arlington? We lost our student from Little Elementary last week, Trayshawn, and we want to lift up Trayshawn and his family as well. And we do have 2 zip codes out of Arlington, 76011 and 76010. But again, this is all of Tarrant County. So it is inclusive of Arlington, and I'll reiterate that even with just the priority zip codes, that's a start, but that is not our only focus. We want to be inclusive of each of those areas. So again, we will be including, it is inclusive of Arlington as well as Mansfield, Grand Prairie, that's on the side where those babies do attend Arlington ISD, our Hearst Bedford area that is inclusive again of all Tarrant County. And Sam, is there anything else you want to lift up in any of those responses?
Yeah, I just want you all to know that we will address this issue in every zip code that needs it over time. But it's important for you all to stay informed about what we do. Most definitely log into the website, 1 second. UnitedWayTarrantCounty.org/1 second collaborative. And then also, if you have any more questions or advice or suggestions, or you want to participate, send us an email at 1.2nd@UnitedWayTarrant.org. Are there any more questions?
There is one, Sam, from Pastor Brown. Only around 10,000 was used for a gun buyback program maybe a year ago. Then millions of dollars were allocated for crime prevention infrastructure. How much has been allocated with the current funding? So Chief Aldridge, I'm going to toss this to you. And also keep in mind, if it is a question that we need to research and circle back, we can do so. But if you have some response to this, this would be really helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. So the gun violence, I mean, we use asset forfeiture funds for gun buyback programs. And each division can basically put in a request for those. It's not limited to $10,000, you know, but with some of the gun buyback programs, we had limited participation. Last year or the year before, Northwest Division had a gun buyback program that they ran out of gift cards within an hour. So it was unbelievably successful, and we continue to run that program even as we speak. So it's not a problem getting the gift cards. It's just a matter of getting the word out and getting people that want to volunteer to participate in that program to come forward.
Thank you, Chief. Sam, there is another question in the chat from Mar Butler of Tree Leadership. Would the applicants know whether if they were officially considered or not? If so, when? Would you like to respond?
Yes, the applicants were notified when their applications was received. They will also be notified if the application was accepted, if it's funded, and then they would also receive information that lets them know what they need to work on in their application in the event that they wanted to apply for funding in the future.
And if I can also add, that was, I would say, a segment of criteria in regards to allocations. Again, we also looked at what is the proposal? We looked at the timeline. We looked at, you know, how long it may take to ramp up this particular work. Again, being able to reduce homicides right now. So sometimes the proposal, even though it was great, we're looking at what is immediate for this phase one, but also knowing that we will have a phase two as well. I will also say that we do have another question in regards to how notifications were sent out. Those notifications, Sam sent those out yesterday and the day before, and they went to the individual that was listed as the point of contact. So if you are looking for your notification and you don't see it, please circle with Sam so that he can make sure that he sends you that documentation.
Regina, I might also add that, you know, you mentioned this, I believe, in the beginning, but there were more than $9 million worth of requests submitted for $2 million of available funding. That shows the need and the interest in this work, and it supports why our organization and many others will continue to seek additional funding to support the capacity that's needed in order to do this work. But it just, you know, there was no way possible to fund 100% or even 50% of the applications that were submitted based on the available.
And Leah, I'll also add as well that there are other opportunities that we also see potential for partnerships, right? Some of the organizations really had a very strong collaboration. So we are also encouraging organizations to continue that collaboration because we believe that there are funding opportunities out there that really looks for collaboration. So as we United Way get funding opportunities that we think fits, because we've seen some of your proposals, also know that we will be sharing those with you as well, because now you're part of our distribution, you're part of what we call our United Way family. And we want to also see this grow because, again, to Leah's point, it really shows the amount that was requested. It shows the need. Well, Sam, there is another question. Excuse me. Aside from monetary support, how will this collaborative provide support to organizations, well, that may be funded or unfunded, i.e. current strategies working in prevention to prevent duplication, et cetera?
Well, what that looks like is making sure that we inform the community about what's going on, but we also plan to have training opportunities for organizations that were funded and organizations that were not funded. So I would encourage the person who asked that question just to make sure you stay in tune with what we're doing on the website, and then also participate in our future webinars and community forums. And that's going to be important.
Can I jump into just real quick, Regina, just to piggyback on Sam's point? I think that's the whole key for the 1 second collaborative is really to do, as the chief said, bring everybody to the table. Sam and team have been talking about what would a regular cadence look like to bring community together, have these meetings in community so that folks can stay abreast. But I think to the question is like really thinking through what's the training needs and what's the capacity built that folks are going to need. Because again, we're learning together and not any of us know everything. So how we come together and learn together, I think is going to be key. Because I think one of the first things that this group, all of us need to understand is what is community violence intervention? Who does it? How does it work? What is it? And then how do we all connect and support that? I think it's a key piece of learning, because I don't think everybody understands what the frontline workers do, who they are, and the support that they need. So I think, as we continue to build out, we can create some lunch and learn kind of sessions and some places where we can just learn together and support each other. But I think, one of the things that, Sam and I just talked about today, and I know they're working on it, is what's the cadence of when we're going to all come together on the regular, just so that we can all stay on the same page. And, the beauty of this kind of collaborative is that once folks are really working in partnership together, there will be funding opportunities that folks can go for together, solicitations that we might not have went for before as a city and a county, but now we can. So I think you'll see all of that happen when we start coming to the table to support each other a little bit different.
Sam, I believe that was all the questions that I see in the chat at this particular moment.
Thank you all for that. So now I would like to turn it over to City Manager, Mr. Fernando Costa.
Thank you, Sam. Assistant City Manager. Happy to be here. Let me thank all the panelists for your participation in this webinar. It's been real productive, I think. But especially thank the 50 or so folks who joined us on the webinar, including folks who are very active in the community, whose names are easily recognizable. Let me thank Councilmember Jared Williams, who joined us, who also serves on the steering committee along with Councilmember Carlos Forrest. And I'd like to thank our newest Councilmember, Jeanette Martinez, who works with Commissioner Brooks, but is representing the newly created Council District 11 for taking part in today's webinar. You've heard from Sam Varner and others about the keys to success, which include collaboration among various agencies and involvement by community leaders, involvement by the kinds of folks who are participating in this webinar. We need you. So if you have something to contribute, please communicate with Sam Varner or Regina Williams. We need you to take part in one of the working groups and a whole host of other ways, because with your involvement, we will succeed in reducing youth gun violence. I'm confident. We're already beginning to see measurable results, but as time goes by, we'll see more. Regina reminds us that this is not a 1 year, 2 year, 3 year effort. This is a long-term effort, maybe a 10-year effort to make a difference, but it will make a difference. This is the right approach. As Chief Noakes and Chief Aldridge said at the outset, we are not going to be able to arrest our way out of this problem. This is not a law enforcement problem primarily. It is primarily crime prevention. It's a community problem that has multiple dimensions, all of which we're seeking to address. So many thanks to United Way and to Tarrant County for allowing the city to participate in this effort to make a difference in the community. Let me turn it back over to Sam Barner. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for those comments. So now I would like to introduce you all to Mr. Commissioner Roy Brooks for closing comments.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you to everyone who took the time to tune in to this webinar. Thank you for your interest in our young people. Thank you to Leah King and United Way for conceiving of this collaboration. Thank you to the City of Fort Worth and to Tarrant County for stepping up to the plate with dollars to help fund solutions to this problem. Make no mistake about it. We are in a crisis in our community. We are in a crisis that involves our young people. And the solutions are both short-term. The short-term solutions include intervention strategies, helping young people to make better decisions and better choices, helping young people to get on a better path and to live better lives. But the solutions are also long-term in nature. Because the problem does not just involve our young people. It involves families. It involves communities. And I would submit to you that the problem is embedded in sick communities. Communities where the educational system does not work, does not provide the proper educational knowledge and pedagogy to teach our kids the skills that they need to be successful in today's world. The problem involves families because children live in an environment that includes their families. If their families are not secure with housing, with food, with jobs, then those children are not going to see hope and opportunity for themselves going forward, no matter how many resources we pour into intervention. We've got to create better communities that provide a better quality of life and more hope and more opportunity for our young people so that they are vested in something other than violence. Until we can do that as a collaboration, as a community, we're not going to make a whole bunch of progress here. So let's start looking at how we can change families, how we can change communities, and how through doing that, we can create better opportunities and better life outcomes for our children. That's my challenge to you today, and let's be about it.
Well, if
Thank you
that
for
doesn't get
that.
you fired up, I don't know what will. Thank you so much, Commissioner Brooks. And I think I'm the person between this ending and I don't want to take a lot of time, but I did want to say thank you so much, Commissioner Brooks. You're exactly right. We'll do a quick recap, which is today you heard a little bit about the work that's happened between December and June. You heard the next steps, which was to get information out to the organizations that have been selected for financial support. We also should have information out to those who were not selected at this time, with some information to give you details on whether or not it was an issue with the application itself or if it was a timing issue. But as you heard reiterated multiple times, there will be another round of funding, so please do not be discouraged. Please continue to work with us. We know that, well, let me say it this, from my perspective, the data versus how it feels, because these young people, when they lose their lives, it feels as if it's worse than ever. And we know bad news travels fast and faster than ever. And we want to be sure that we get to a point working together that we are able to mitigate as many, if not all, of these deaths. We know all is pie in the sky, but that's what we ought to be shooting for. Because all of these young people who are making choices that are not serving them well, short-term or long-term, is a detriment to them and to all of us in the community. And so we really appreciate everybody spending their time today. We encourage you to stay close to the website that you heard mentioned and that hopefully is in the chat. I apologize that I cannot see that, but if not, we will be sure to email that information out, share this information broadly. When the neighborhood groups begin to form, please get engaged, because this has to be driven by community, not by United Way, not by city, not by county. This is a community challenge that we all experience together, and together we will be the ones to address those issues and to make Tarrant County and Fort Worth, Arlington, and all of our cities the best place that it can be. So thank you so much for being here today. And we look forward to providing you another briefing and a calendar of upcoming briefings so that we can get everybody prepared on when and where you'll meet us. Next time we'll be out within the community. Have a good evening, and thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.